The house is not just brick and mortar. It is a vault of your memories. But in a divorce, it also is the biggest financial asset and potentially your biggest liability. So today, I'll be talking real estate with the Breakup Broker and how to survive the sale without losing your mind. Welcome back. Welcome to Divorcing Strong, the podcast that pulls no punches when it comes to divorce. I'm Becky Sampson, better known as Bulldog Becky Brockovich, and I'm here to give you the straight talk, the strategies, and the subpoena secrets you won't hear anywhere else. With expert guests and proven advice, you'll learn your rights, your options, and gain your power that encourages a fair and equitable outcome. Divorce doesn't have to break you. It can build you. Let's get to it. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Divorcing Strong podcast. Of course, we are just moving right along this week. This is our second one today. So I'm very excited to bring to you another professional. And I know we talk about a lot of this about the mortgage and about also what to do with your house. Like that's one of the biggest things is people are like, who's going to get the house in the divorce? Really? That's the case. And many of you may or may not know, but that's where my first career is I was a real estate agent, and I worked with all kinds, started commercial, then first home buyers to high end to builders. And I love everything real estate. So when I saw the title of the Breakup Broker, I was like, what's going on? So I love this. If you are in a position right now where you're kind of trying to decide like who's going to keep the house, how does that whole transaction happen? I know we've talked a lot about mortgages, but we're going to really talk about and dive deep into real estate and why it's so important to get people who specialize specifically in divorce real estate transactions. So today's episode of Divorcing Strong, I'm joined by Amy Slate. She's a realtor and a voice behind the Breakup Broker. Divorce has a way of turning the place you called home into a question mark, one filled with fear, urgency, and pressure to decide before you're ready. Amy works inside that moment. She specializes in helping women navigate buying or selling or a home during or after a divorce when emotions are high and the stakes couldn't be more personal. With years of industry experience and a deep respect for the emotional toll of this transition, Amy brings empathy to a space that often feels cold and transactional. Her work isn't about rushing decisions. It's about restoring confidence, protecting your future options, and helping women reclaim the sense of agency when everything feels so uncertain. Through her platform and practice, she reframes real estate as a powerful turning point, not just a transaction. So stay with us because this conversation could change how you think about your home, stability, and what comes next. So welcome to the show, Amy.
Hey there.
Sorry, I couldn't find my button.
No worries.
Well, welcome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and to come talk all things real estate. I love real estate. So to get started, just kind of tell everybody kind of where you came from, what got you in this industry, and what really made you the pivot, because there was a pivot towards helping people through divorce.
Sure. So my past life, I will say, I was in education for almost 2 decades. I was a teacher. I trained teachers. I worked at the university level. And so education is kind of at the core of my being, right? So that's a little tidbit that kind of has helped shape this whole thing. But after all that time in education, I got a little burnt out. And my then husband suggested that maybe you should get your real estate license because we had bought some investment properties, done some light flips, things like that. And I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. Got my license, joined a team, had a super successful first year, and was like, okay, I can do this. I get this, right? Mm-hmm. And, I'm in my 9th year of the business. And it's good. I love my clients. I'm incredibly fortunate. I manage my own time, grow my own business, all the things. But in a true lemons to lemonade story,
Mm,
I was surprised with my own divorce. My gosh, almost 2 years ago now. And during that time, that initial like, oh my God, my world is crumbling.
right.
I'm navigating the divorce process and how to sort that out while also thinking about we own multiple properties across the country, internationally. Like, I've got to figure this piece out. And it was so stressful. And I kept thinking, I do this for a living and it's stressing me out this way. So how do all these other women who don't do it for a living, how are they even managing? You know?
Absolutely.
And simultaneously, I'm in all the Facebook groups for divorce and I'm seeing women asking questions. Can I keep the house? Should I keep the house? And well-intentioned community members are chiming in and typing away answers. And I just kept looking, going, oh my God, no, but maybe, but kind of, but your situation is unique. And I just decided there is a need for someone to just be a resource, a guide, a consultant to just help these women walk through their situation, talk through their situation, and understand what might be the best options for them.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. We were talking just a little bit before the show about like finding a need and to niche and then looking for solutions to fulfill it. And I love that you were there. You're like, wait a minute, this is a problem out there. People don't understand how important it is, especially when it comes to one of your largest assets,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, what do you do with that? And I love that you also do international because that was your personal experience
Yep.
in selling and navigating dissipation of
Right.
foreign
Exactly.
real estate.
Exactly.
That's crazy. So what was the first thing that you really kind of recognized in your own case or whatever you'd like to share with your divorce? Like what was one of the major things that you're like, oh my gosh, I need to know how to do this or navigate through that?
Sure. Well, so mine is still ongoing. The case is not closed yet, so I will tread lightly in that area.
Okay, perfect.
But I will say, it was a matter of we have all these assets that throughout the duration of this process, however long it will go, they need to be maintained. There's tenant communication, there's leases, there's repairs, and
Yeah.
really navigating, okay, the soon-to-be ex-spouse and I can't stand each other, but we still have these joint assets that need to be taken care of. And when we did decide to sell a few things as part of this ongoing process, it was a matter of, okay, I'm not going to be the real estate agent because I don't want to be in that position. So hiring an external person who is a neutral third party to come in and really be the communicator and the person to manage that process. It's hard to be in it and then step out from it a little bit. And so having to understand those boundaries in my personal situation was important, but also really taking a hard look at what do I want to keep? What do I want to be bought out of? What do I think could and should be sold? Really taking stock of the portfolio of properties. And I know not everyone has multiple rental properties, and sometimes it's just your marital asset, which still is a huge asset. And, the decision you make about that really impacts the next couple decades of your life.
So do you find that people that you work with are usually like, obviously when the divorce starts happening, somebody's got to move out of the house, right? Typically. Do you know any rules or anything that are out there of like when you move? Because that's a big question for people. Like, oh, if I move out of the house, does that mean I'm not going to get my share of the house?
I'm not an attorney, and everything's very state by state specific. In general, if you don't feel, I'm going to use the term safe, in whatever capacity that is, being in the home, and everyone's kind of in agreement and you document everything, I don't personally see an issue with moving out of the home. It is still a marital asset. The deed is still in both of your names. It's like if one party decided to take an extended vacation to Europe for a few months, that person's not in the house for 3 months, but they still own that home to some extent,
So it's interesting because that was a question that kind of came up when I was doing the research for this podcast is that if somebody's name is not on the deed, but they're married, do you know what the rights are with that, or how do you navigate that with your clients? I know you're not an attorney, by the way.
And that is very state specific.
Yes.
And timeline, if you have been in a relationship if you can prove that you put a certain amount of money toward that purchase. There's a lot of variables that I don't like to speak broad strokes because there are so many nuances to the situation.
Right.
But in general, ladies, get your name on the deed if you are contributing to that house.
Yes, that is a very important thing. And I think what are the things that you see that when people come to you, what are the most common questions that they ask?
I think the general instinct is, I can't keep the house. That there are so many women that come to me and just go, I know I have to sell. Well, do you? Like, let's talk about this. And I oftentimes it's women who've been stay-at-home moms, and I do work a lot with women and a few men. So a lot of my stories and kind of anecdotes will be about women in this context. They just assume, well, because he's handled all the bills and he's done this, that she can't keep the house. That's not always true. And I think part of what sets me apart from some other agents who are, for good or ill, looking for a sale. Oh, you're getting divorced. Somebody must need to sell a house. There's a lot of that ambulance chasing out there, which is kind of gross and dirty to me, but each their own. My conversations with these women are, all right, let's talk. There are 3 big buckets: logistics, finances, and emotions. So logistically, is this house near your kid's school, near your work, near your family and support system? Financially, do you have income? Will you be getting support? What do the dollars and cents look like? And then emotions, do you even want to stay in this house? There are many women who are like, we've had every Christmas for the last 20 years here. I can't imagine not being here. And there are others who are like, I want to burn it to the ground. I never want to see this place again. And so talking through those 3 buckets helps them figure out what option they might want to lean toward. And then we figure out, can we make that option happen?
Yeah. So I know that there's people that specialize specifically as real estate agents with divorce cases. And you kind of alluded to this before. It's hard to be a real estate agent and going through your own transactions. But do you specialize specifically in helping both spouses deal with the sale of that house? And is that something that you've got training on, or is that something that you just kind of threw in and be like, hey, yeah, I want to be able to help you because I understand firsthand what this is like?
You're probably referencing, there's a designation called the CDRE, Certified Divorce Real Estate Expert. I do not have that. There are some limitations if you do have that on how you can work with people, which is neither good or bad, just that's the situation. Most of this is born from my own experience. I am working on a real estate mediation designation, which is more about kind of mediating the parties, because as you just alluded to, there are 2 parties. Even if the wife is the one that comes to me, the husband or the spouse, the partner, is still involved in the sale, and being able to communicate effectively and efficiently with both parties who may be at odds with each other is super, super important.
Yeah, because one of the questions too is when so if you get to the point where you need to sell the house, but one of the spouses refuses to negotiate on the price, or, maybe they need to lower the price to get it sold and they're not willing to do that. What do you do with those kind of situations?
Typically, if there are attorneys involved or mediators involved and a court involved, I will get brought in as an expert to kind of say, what's the price? What's the plan? What should we do? And at some point, push comes to shove, the court may have to step in and tell the spouse who's not being cooperative, we've got X number of days. If there's not an offer on the property in that much time, then we are agreeing to lower it by A or B. It typically does take a court order to force one of the parties to cooperate.
That's interesting, because most people wouldn't think to do, a court order, maybe a motion or something like that, to get the courts behind you to be able to move forward with the transaction. What other things have you seen or experienced that you felt were very valuable to the people that work with you, when it comes to whether or not they should keep the house, whether they should let it go, how much to settle for it, when to get an appraisal? Do both parties get appraisals? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I could go on for hours. It's interesting. Kind of the most visceral thing that I take from these calls is just the shoulders releasing and them taking a deep breath, because this is such unknown territory for so many of them. And there's so much lingo and words and things and technical numbers and all these things flying around that when we like calmly talk it through, they just can like breathe a sigh of relief because they now feel informed and empowered to be able to make a decision about this whole thing, right? So there's that. The other thing is, again, one party typically comes to me, sometimes unbeknownst to the second party. And I always say, this is a team effort. We've got to get everyone on the same page. So it's not just you saying like, hey, I've got this realtor and we're going to use her. No, we're going to find 3 realtors. You're going to present those to your spouse and they're going to pick one. It's almost like if you're cutting a cookie in half, I'll cut it in half, but then you get to pick because then it's not like I cut a bigger half or a smaller half, right? So people feel involved in the process as opposed to just one-sided. So I think as difficult as it is, getting everyone involved in the process so it doesn't feel like something being forced down on the other spouse is super, super important.
So this is an interesting question is that how do you sell a house during the divorce? Like what's the right time to avoid the whole panic selling?
I typically don't let anyone panic sell. Like, let's talk this through.
Yeah. Good idea.
And, above and beyond just like the divorce is happening and he's moving out or she's moving out or whichever, let's talk through, do your kids need to finish the school year? Mm-hmm. Is the winter market in New England really crummy and no one's going to buy your house in the 18 inches of snow we have on the ground right now? Like, let's talk about what's most beneficial for everyone, including you, in terms of your family and getting enough, getting more bang for your buck. So it's not just like, all right, we're going to sell and wash our hands of this. Let's be strategic. We've decided we're going to sell. Let's be strategic about when that happens and how that happens.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important is to be able to see the big picture because you're not just affecting you and your spouse, you're affecting children most likely. And taking into consideration their school schedule and how it's going to affect them to be out and looking for another place. What do you see as the most common mistakes people make in this transaction?
I think, to your earlier point, just rushing to get it done and get it sold so we can get that asset, get that money in the bank. And going with the first agent who knocks on the door or any of those things, just not taking a breath, taking a pause and just looking at all the information, looking at all the parties involved, getting multiple opinions. I'm helping a client right now who was approached by a few agents and she sent me kind of it's called a net sheet. Shows the value and how much, pay off the mortgage and this and that, whatever. And she's not even in my market. She's in the Midwest. So it's not even a real estate market that I know. But I looked at it and I said, these 2 agents are $250,000 apart on their value of your home. Like that's substantial, right? Not only that, but like in the, all the things you've got to pay outline, one of them didn't even include commissions. And that's a big chunk of money. So I said, let's just make sure that, I like to act just as the guide on the side. And you've got your agent in the Midwest who you're going to work with, but let's make sure they're checking the boxes and let's keep them accountable too. Or if they're not, let's find you a good one or a better one. So I think rushing and just not being informed, because for many people, this is the first time they've sold a house.
Right.
They've not done this before. And even if they did, it was a while ago potentially, and things have changed, laws have changed, the markets have changed.
Yeah, and real estate is such this is another thing. It's like with attorneys. Sometimes you need the attorney, sometimes you don't. But when it comes to real estate, you just do not want to mess around with that transaction, because if you miss something, or I remember I'll tell on myself, my very first time, I was probably 24 years old. I'd just taken the real estate test. And my first client, the day before closing, there was a flood in the basement. And I didn't know that I needed to inform them. They could have easily sued me. I was like, I just didn't know what I was doing. But, as I went through the years of being in real estate and all different types of real estate, you learn those kind of things. And that's the thing is that you're doing this day in and day out. So you can come with all that experience and say, hey, you might want to consider this, you might want to consider that. And also the evaluations, because what What's been your experience, especially if maybe one spouse gets an appraisal and the other spouse gets another appraisal? How do you counsel them um, in negotiating that?
Literally happened in my own situation and in countless others. That's often the case because if party A wants to buy the other one out, they're going to hope for a lower value.
Of course.
If party B is getting bought out, they're going to hope for a higher value.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, it's a matter of like, let's get a third one and see where it lands. And at some point, you have to just take the average and agree. Or somebody's got to kind of capitulate and say like, all right, fine, we'll go with your value. You know, I mean, hopefully it's not $250,000 discrepancy between the two. But oftentimes each spouse will dig their heels in and say, this is the value. And, you know, who's right, who's wrong. It gets easy if the house is to be sold because the market will determine.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, but then it's interesting because some people will hold it hostage, right? So an offer comes in and they don't want to sell, or they want to sell at a certain price. And then you're like, wait a minute, how do we negotiate, both of us deciding? And then, like you said earlier, you have to go in front of a judge, to be able to say, hey, you know, if it doesn't sell within that period of time, then you're going to have to lower the price and take a look. So it is a really tricky case.
Yeah,
I think. So what else do you recommend for people to watch out for, especially when it comes to just starting the process of the evaluation and being able to negotiate, like, because there's a lot of different ways. I think you had kind of alluded to it, that they can stay in the house. What are the things that they want to consider with that versus do we just sell it and move on?
Yeah. I'm going to dial it back even earlier in the process because oftentimes I get women who are like, I'm just thinking about it. What should I do? And first and foremost, I'm going to say collect as much data as you can because as you know, as we're going through these situations, oftentimes if spouse A has the logins to the mortgage company and all of a sudden spouse A gets angry, they're going to lock you out of the mortgage company login, right? And so in those early days, collect as much documentation, information, numbers, get as much as you can about the mortgage, get a copy of the deed. I've run into situations where one spouse quit claimed the deed to himself, not so legally, but so now like got spouse B off the deed. Like there's some shady stuff that can go on. So get all the documents you can in your hands as quickly as you can, because that's going to be the information we're going to use to make decisions going forward. Right.
So how would they get, so here's for people that don't know, I mean, I know how to do it, but for you to tell the listeners, where would they go to get a copy of their deed?
Sure. So I help women all the time and I don't know every place in the world to do this. So I just go on my friend Google and I say, you know, Chicago, Illinois, property record search or property database or appraisals database. Any of those words should turn up the actual like town or city or state database where all this information is kept. I will say, be careful. The first half dozen kind of search finds are all pay to play, like ads and like subscription services. Keep scrolling until you see something that looks like an actual governmental site. And I'm honestly, I have women reach out and say like, can you help me get a copy of my deed? And I'm happy to do that just because I know what I'm looking for and it's easier and faster for me. It takes 2 minutes and I'm always happy to do it.
So also, this is a really important thing. So really, usually it's the recorder's office in your county that will have it. Some of them will have it online. Sometimes they won't. However, you are entitled to all of that, especially, I mean, anybody, I could go pull any deed off any piece of property. But if you're in a situation, and especially if it's high conflict, I recommend that you go and actually do, most counties have it so that you can put an alert on there. If somebody does change something on that record or on that house, then you get alerted with an email. So, and sometimes you can even stop anything from being recorded. Not typically, but at least you can monitor it. Because that is something that shady stuff happens all the time.
Can I actually add another tip there?
Yes.
So home equity lines of credit or home equity loans. Another thing that the loan is taken out in both parties' names, but I had this happen to me and I was told that party A can take the loan without me knowing about it or signing off on it. So I called them and had them put a flag alert on it, basically saying like, they said they couldn't stop party B from doing it, but that I would be alerted at least. So if you do have a home equity line on your home, call that bank and just let them know what's going on and give them a heads up.
Perfect. You know, we did a show a couple weeks ago on credit. Same thing with that, because we don't think to, you know, all these tentacles, especially if you've been married for a long time, they're all connected. And when you're going through a divorce, sometimes you don't think straight. And so you're not thinking of like, oh, I need to put alert here and alert here and alert here. But you have the right to do that. You absolutely have the right to do that. So when people come to you, so you actually work in all states, which is unusual, and international. Talk a little bit about that.
Correct. So I have international real estate experience personally. I've helped other friends and family find properties, purchase properties, things like that. And the way my model works, which I feel even weird calling it a model, but basically I just come in as a consultant to talk to the people getting divorced, help them explore their options. I am personally licensed in Massachusetts and Florida, but the bulk of the people I speak to are not in Massachusetts and Florida. So I just talk them through the process, answer their questions, help them gather information, and help them maybe decide, what are we going to do? And if and when the time comes that they're like, we do want to sell, or I want to buy something else, however that looks, I then take the task of actually finding them real estate agents in their area as well, because when you're in divorce, your brain is muddled. You've got 9,000 things on your to-do list. Going to find a quality realtor is not something you're like waking up excited to do. So I know the questions to ask. I know like the things to look for. And so I find great joy in screening real estate agents for clients in their specific area.
Well, and because of your experience, you know what you're looking for with the type of agent that's going to work well with someone going through a divorce.
Exactly.
And I love that you're getting also into mediation. I'm trained mediator as well, but it is something that when you have that skill, you're better able to negotiate with other professionals in the area to help support them. I absolutely love that. So what kind of, as we're wrapping up, like what are the things that, you know, maybe that you haven't mentioned that people should probably consider, or tips that they should pay attention to? It's like, who's going to get the house, you know, when it comes to real estate? What else would you?
You know, I think the big takeaway is just there's no one size fits all. And as I said earlier, there are all these Facebook groups and people trying to be helpful, but your situation is your situation. And, you know, I heard recently there was a family who they couldn't stand each other, but they had multiple kids. And so they were nesting. They rented an apartment, and, you know, weeks on, weeks off, one spouse would go to the apartment and the other one would stay in the house with the kids. And so like every situation is so unique, and what works for you might not work for anybody else, or vice versa. So don't just take what you're seeing online or what you're hearing from your nosy friends to be the option. You know, I think find someone who can help you talk through it, who's an expert, who can provide third-party neutral guidance about your situation, and not just jump to, well, Susie down the street got a divorce and she had to sell her house, so I must have to sell my house, because that's not always the case.
Yeah. And what do you love most about the work that you do?
I truly, and I said this earlier, like I physically see these women just like exhale and just feel a sense of relief after we talk, or while we're talking, because they suddenly feel informed and empowered and like they have a path forward. And before we talked, it was, I'm not saying I'm like a miracle worker, but before we spoke, there was just this overwhelming sense of all these things I know nothing about. And it's a really big decision. It's a really big asset, and it affects my kids and affects me. And what do I do? And just by having some information and having someone who is calm and empathetic and can help you understand, like they just relax, and it brings me such joy.
I love it. I know one of the things that I used to do when I was a real estate agent is I'd always take on clients and say, look, I'm going to put you through real estate 101, because I know the more information I give you before you sign that paper, you are going to feel more confident about the decisions. And that's what I hear from you is that you build the confidence within your clients, and you calm down the chaos because they're informed. And that's the whole reason why I even started this whole podcast, is because I know that the more informed people are on their rights, understand about the legal system, understand how to engage professionals like yourself, they're going to feel so much more calm and confident going through this. And they're going to really ultimately come up through the process a lot stronger.
Yeah.
And that's my intent. So my question for you is, what does divorcing strong mean to you?
Ooh. Divorcing strong is feeling good in your power and working toward an outcome where you feel complete and you feel whole and you feel ready for that next chapter.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And it is really true. Is I always tell people that this is a temporary state in your life. And just because it feels like it's permanent, it's not. It is a temporary state. And there is a beautiful life on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
If we can just stay strong through the process, get the help we need, and get on the other side. So thank you so much, Amy, for being on the podcast today, taking time, and thank you for what you do and the way that you do it. Because, there's a million real estate agents out there. But when you kind of are going through it yourself and you know how to better support somebody that's emotionally having to navigate these crazy waters.
Yep. I do.
So thank you so much. And so do you do free consultations so they can go to your website?
Yep. All my consultations are free. The only time I get paid is if someone sells a house and I refer them an agent, but the actual client never pays me any money.
Perfect. I love it. That's one thing I did love about real estate.
Yeah.
We serve on the front end.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Hold on just one sec. Thank you guys, everybody, for joining another episode. Make sure if you like this or you want to share it with people that are going through divorce, make sure you like, subscribe, and share. And thank you for joining us for another episode of Divorcing Strong. I'm Becky Sampson. I've been your host with Amy Slate today, and we will see you on the next episode. Have a great day. Thanks for listening to the Divorcing Strong podcast. This episode is sponsored by Only Subpoenas, where we make subpoenas simple, powerful, and 100% compliant. If you're having a hard time getting the information you need to settle for a fair and equitable divorce, let us help you. Whether you're an attorney or you're navigating divorce on your own, subpoenas can uncover the truth, secure the evidence you need, and level the playing field. To see how we can help, book an appointment by visiting our website at onlysubpoenas.com.